In a bookstore on Fifth Avenue at 10 in the morning on September 1st, 1998, you could walk to the counter and buy a manual for lying, flattering, and crushing your enemies. The price was $27, 452 pages, printed by Viking Press, bound in black and red. On its cover, 3,000 years of scheming distilled into 48 laws. 715 miles west, at the same hour 24 years later, a guard at Utah State Prison in Draper would take that same book from a cell and lock it in contraband. It was one of only 2 titles banned in all 5 of that prison's libraries. The other book was by the same author. Booksellers and prison wardens rarely agree. Here they agree this object is dangerous, for opposite reasons. Both call it the Black Book. Hold that contradiction in your head. Because the reason everyone fears it is not the reason you think. Go back to 1995, to a village outside Treviso in northern Italy, an art and media school called Fabrica. It was funded by the Benetton clothing company. Young designers and writers lived together and made magazines. One writer there was 36. He was American. He had a degree in classical studies. He started at Berkeley. He finished at Wisconsin-Madison. He had worked about 50 jobs. He says 50. Some counts say 80. Construction worker, translator, magazine editor, Hollywood film writer. He had lived in London, Paris, Barcelona. He spoke several languages. He translated. He waited tables. He did research for hire. He was watching. Every boss, every producer, every editor taught him a move. Write that down, he told himself. The man who spent his 20s watching rooms and writing down the moves was Robert Greene. Greene was born May 14, 1959, in Los Angeles. He did not plan to write about power. He planned to survive. At Fabrica, he met a man who made books look like weapons. The book packager who understood that design, his argument, Joost. Elfers had made visual books in New York. He listened while Greene talked late at night about power. Greene said power is not moral. It is not good or evil. It is a game of perception. Elfers said make a treatment. Greene wrote one in months. He argued that 3,000 years of history hide the same 48 patterns. Machiavelli for cunning, Sun Tzu for indirection, Karl von Clausewitz for war, from Henry Kissinger to P.T. Barnum for modern proof. Each law would have a violation and an observance, a story for each, a reversal for each. Elfers saw the object, big, heavy, 452 pages, about 3 inches thick when you stack it. Heavy as a small brick in your hand, black cover, red type, old prints, wide margins. It would feel like an archive, like something you should not own. Viking Press said yes. It hit shelves September 1st, 1998. Take that break and open it. Picture it. Each page is dense. Left side, the law. Center, the story. Right margin, the comment. Law 1. Never outshine the master. Law 3. Conceal your intentions. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. Law 33. Discover each man's thumbscrew. Some laws sound prudent. Make the master feel superior. Say less than necessary. Others sound cruel. Get others to do the work. Pose as a friend. Work as a spy. Most stories come from the past. A French king who made nobles sleep in his palace. A Chinese general who faked disorder. An Italian courtier who flattered his way into the Vatican. That was the trick. The book felt scholarly. It felt like history. It cost $27. You could buy it at any airport. Early reviews hated it. A Stanford professor who studies organizations, Jeffrey Pfeffer, said the laws were based on isolated examples, not solid research. The trade journal Kirkus said Greene offered no evidence for his worldview, that the laws contradicted each other, that the book was simply nonsense. People bought it anyway. Word of mouth did what ads did not. In the United States, it sold more than 1.2 million copies. That is one book for every 270 Americans. Worldwide, more than 2 million. It spread into 24 languages, enough editions to cover a long library shelf. Fast Company called it a mega cult classic. The Los Angeles Times said it made Greene a cult hero with the hip-hop set, the Hollywood elite and prison inmates alike. Rappers quoted it by law number. Go listen, Jay-Z name checks it. Kanye West. Drake planned a series on it. Busta Rhymes said he used it with movie producers. The man who made the prison connection permanent was Curtis Jackson, the rapper who lived Law 15 and then asked for a meeting, 50 Cent. So here is the satisfying answer. The one you settle into around page 50. This book is feared because it teaches people to be sociopaths. It is a recipe book for manipulation. Step 1. Flatter. Step 2. Deceive. Step 3. Crush. Of course prisons ban it. You can see why. If you think that, you are not alone. That is exactly what the wardens say. Utah State Prison told the Salt Lake Tribune the 2 green books were banned because they teach manipulation. Pan America later found the same title banned in 18 states, the second most banned book in American prisons, right behind a different book that also should not need banning. The Art of War is on those lists too. So is Prison Ramen. So is a book called Anyone Can Draw. But Greene's is the one that shows up again and again. Texas alone bans more than 10,000 titles. Florida bans more than 22,000. Utah banned 2. Both Greene's. The Art of Seduction was the other. That feels like proof. The book must be a weapon. You hand a man in a cell a weapon and he will use it. That is the comfortable fear. It lets you put the danger inside the book. It lets you believe the world outside the book is normal. Keep that idea for a minute. Picture it clearly. A paper weapon, sealed in plastic, locked in a property room. If we stop here, the film is tidy. Bad book makes bad people worse. Ban the book. Problem solved. Except the same prisons that ban it also report it is the most requested book in their libraries. Think about that. The most requested and the most confiscated. At the same time. In the same buildings. How does a manual for predators become the most requested survival guide for the prey? Add it up. If it only created predators, the prey would not line up to read it. They do. So the book is doing something else. Take the 2 facts side by side. Banned as a weapon. Requested as a shield. Now pull the wrong answer off the table. The book does not invent manipulation. It names it. That is different. You already live inside these laws. You just do not call them laws. Your boss who takes credit in the meeting. That is Law 7. Get others to do the work for you. Take the credit. The colleague who never replies quickly. That is Law 4. Always say less than necessary. The influencer who makes you want what she pretends not to sell. That is Law 31. Control the options. Greene did not make these moves up. He collected them. 3,000 years. That number is on the cover for a reason. It tells you this is not new. So why does naming it feel so threatening? Because once you name a game, you can see when you are being played. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That is why the people who run closed worlds fear it most. In a prison, power is naked. There is no HR, no polite email. You read the yard correctly, or you pay. One kid told a researcher he read the laws to understand why older inmates were kind to him before asking for something. He was learning Law 3, conceal your intentions, not to use it, to spot it. Put the 2 prisons side by side. Utah bans the book to stop inmates manipulating guards. Inmates request the book to stop other inmates manipulating them. Same pages. Opposite uses. So say the rude objection out loud, the one you are thinking. This is just obvious cynical fortune cookie nonsense that does not even work. Why would anyone fear a self-help scam? Fair. Some of it is obvious. Be polite to your boss. Do not brag. Some of it is contradictory. One law says never outshine the master. Another says court attention at all costs. Which is it? Both. That is the point. Power is situational. The book admits that in the reversal at the end of each chapter. When to obey, when to break, when to do the opposite. That does not make it science. It makes it a field guide. Field guides are messy. They describe birds you will actually see. They do not prove birds should exist. And field guides are not dangerous because they create birds. Take one case. One story that carries Law 1 better than any slogan. France. 1661. The finance minister who built a house too beautiful for his own safety. Nicolas Fouquet. Fouquet was born in 1615. He ran the kingdom's money under the young King Louis XIV. He was rich. He was charming. He hired the best 3 men in France. The architect Louis Laveau, the painter Charles Lebrun, the gardener André Lenotre. For 3 years they built him a chateau 25 miles southeast of Paris. Vaux-le-Vicomte. It had a dome. It had a moat. It had gardens that stretched to the horizon and used forced perspective to look infinite. No one had seen anything like it. On August 17, 1661, Fouquet threw a party to honor his king. 600 guests. 5,000? The numbers vary. The king came. The queen mother came. There were plays by Molière, fireworks, fountains that had never run before. Fouquet thought he was showing loyalty. He was showing superiority. Picture that night, a 22-year-old king walking through rooms more perfect than his own, hearing guests praise his minister more than him, seeing art his minister assembled and he did not have. Louis smiled. He left early. 3 weeks later, on September 5, 1661, at Nantes, Fouquet was arrested on the king's order. The man who pushed the arrest was Jean-Baptiste Colbert, who wanted Fouquet's job. The charges were embezzlement and treason. The trial lasted 3 years. Public opinion turned for Fouquet. On December 20, 1664, the judges sentenced him to banishment. The king commuted it to life imprisonment. Fouquet was taken to the fortress of Pignerol in the Alps. He stayed there until he died. March 23, 1680, 19 years inside. While the king took Fouquet's 3 artists and built Versailles, the biggest stage in Europe, Louis made nobles live there so he could watch them. Beds in corridors, no privacy. No privacy means no plotting. The law worked. Versailles made the king incomparable. That is the observance. Fouquet is the transgression. Same law. Never outshine the master. Greene puts them on facing pages. You can test it in your own office tomorrow. The brilliant intern who corrects the boss in front of a client will learn Vaux le Vicomte without ever going to France. Now move that same law out of Versailles and into our world. Think of a place where outshining the master gets you hurt quickly. A prison yard, a record label, a startup boardroom. The book traveled there first. Not because Greene marketed there, because readers carried it there. Dov Charney, who founded American Apparel, handed out hundreds of copies to employees and quoted the laws in board meetings. He later put Greene on his company's board. That is how cult spread works. One person hands another a tool that explains a room they do not understand. The rapper's studio was another such room. Greene tells a story about meeting Curtis Jackson. The rapper who became 50 Cent asked his manager to get the author of the Black Book. Greene expected a caricature. He found a man with Zen-like calm, a strategist. They talked about fear. That conversation became a book together in 2009, The 50th Law. Its single principle, fear nothing. Greene says 50 Cent is his most adept student because he lived the laws without reading them. Jay-Z, Busta Rhymes, Kanye West all cite the same pages. Not for lyrics. For business. How to play a shark-infested industry and keep ownership. Go back to the prisons. The book is taught in business management classes at colleges like Millsaps and Ramapo. It is also, quote, much requested in American prison libraries. That phrase is from the Wikipedia page footnotes, but the request slips are real. PEN America counted it. Second most banned, 18 states. How does that happen? Prisons banned by category. Books that teach lock picking. Books that teach gang codes. Greene's book has no diagrams for picking a lock. It has a diagram for picking a person's trust. Wardens call that the ultimate manipulation. Greene told PEN it is a form of control, the ultimate form of power of manipulation. That is his line through PEN. He is not defensive. He says yes, it is about control. But control is not always the prisoner controlling the guard. Sometimes it is the guard controlling the prisoner. Sometimes it is the older prisoner controlling the younger. If you know Law 3 and Law 4, you see the setup 2 moves earlier. That is why they line up to read it, not to become wolves, to spot wolves. You are right to ask whether any of this is true. Say it ruder. This book is a cherry-picked history scrapbook for people who want to feel Machiavellian without ever reading Machiavelli. That is the serious objection. And the people who make it are not trolls. They are a named professor on the record. The Stanford scholar who studies power in organizations, Jeffrey Pfeffer, said the so-called laws are based on isolated examples, not on solid research. He is right about that. Each law hangs on 2 or 3 anecdotes. A king, a con artist, a general. That is not a data set. That is a story collection. The Kirkus Review said the same in harsher words. It said Greene offered no evidence to support his worldview, that the laws contradict each other, that the book is simply nonsense. Hold that. Read it again without the insult. Offers no evidence. Laws contradict. Those 2 claims are accurate. Greene defines power nowhere cleanly. He mixes prestige with coercion with seduction. He tells you in Law 1 to hide your brilliance. In Law 6, he tells you to court attention at all costs. Do both? You cannot obey both at once. The reversal tries to patch it. It says sometimes do the opposite. That is not a law like gravity. It is a heuristic, a rule of thumb. A move that works if the room is like this, fails if the room is like that. Newsweek made the same point. It said if Greene wanted to disprove his own laws, he could not have done better than showing how they contradict. So concede what the skeptic is right about. This is not science. It will not predict the next election. It will not help you build a bridge. It is not peer-reviewed. It is not falsifiable. If you treat it as physics, you will be fooled. But if you treat it as language, it does something. It gives you words for moves you already feel. Always say less than necessary. That is not a law. That is a sentence you can hear someone using on you, and hearing it matters. So let us concede further. The skeptic is also right that many powerful people ignore these laws and still win. Plenty succeed by being generous, open, collaborative. Greene knows that too. He wrote a later book about that side. He has talked about the price of living by these laws every day. Paranoia, loneliness, no trust. You cannot run a marriage on Law 15. Crush your enemy totally does not work at home. The book never says use all 48 all the time. It says these 48 get used on you, whether you like it or not. That is the shift. Think of the difference between a manual and a mirror. A manual says do this. A mirror says you are doing this already, and someone is doing it to you right now. That is quieter. It is also harder to ignore. You can close a manual. You cannot close a mirror without looking away. And looking away is itself a move in the game. Around 70% of the way through any reading of this book, the gear should change. Not louder, quieter. Not argument, scene. So change it here. No charts, no debate, just a room. Picture a small room, cinder block, a metal desk bolted to the floor. A man in his 20s. He has been inside 2 years. He has a paperback. The spine is cracked. The cover is the concised edition, smaller than the hardcover. He reads with a pencil. He underlines Law 1. He writes a name in the margin. He underlines Law 34. Be royal in your own fashion. He writes another name. He is not planning to manipulate the warden. He is trying to map why his cellmate asked to hold his commissary, then has stopped asking. That is the quiet use. That is why they ban it and why they request it. Same pencil. Stay in that room a bit longer. Hear what is not there. No music. The heater ticks. He turns to Law 4. Always say less than necessary. He remembers the intake interview where he talked too much. He nods. He turns to Law 10. Infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky. He thinks about a table he should not sit at in the yard. He does not become a philosopher. He becomes a little safer. Picture another room. Not a cell. A conference room in Los Angeles. Same book on a glass table. A junior creative has it open to Law 1. Never outshine the master. He is deciding whether to show the client the better idea first or let the boss show it and add the better idea as support. He chooses the second. He keeps his job. No one calls this evil. They call it politics. Put those two rooms side by side. Same book, same law. One man uses it to stay alive. One man uses it to stay employed. The pages do not care. That is why the book feels amoral. It is not telling you to be good. It is telling you the room is amoral whether you are good or not. If you want a moral use, Greene gives you one in the introduction. He says you can use these laws defensively. You can see a suck-up, a setup, a squeeze before it closes. You can step aside. He is not moralizing. He is saying you cannot defend against what you cannot name. And you cannot name it without history. That is why the anecdotes matter even if they are cherry-picked. Vol le Vicomte may be a single anecdote, but you will feel it once and remember it. That is what anecdotes are for, not proof, memory. There is a coda Greene did not plan. In August of 2018, 3 weeks before he launched his book, The Laws of Human Nature, he suffered a serious stroke. He has said it was a blood clot in his neck. He was driving with his wife. She got him to the hospital. He spent months in recovery. His left side did not work for a while. He used a wheelchair. He could not write by hand the way he did before. He described it later as a near-death moment. He did not write about power the same way after. He wrote about mortality, dependence, slowness. He told interviewers that mastery after a stroke means relearning to move a finger. That is Law 48 in real life. Assume formlessness. Be like water. He had always written that. Now he lived it. It does not make the early book kinder. It makes the author less of a cartoon villain. He's not a Machiavellian in a tower. He is a man who cataloged power while working 50 jobs, who became famous for a black and red manual, who watched that manual get banned in 18 states and requested in the same prisons, who heard rappers quote his law numbers and professors call his book nonsense, and then had to learn to stand again. Put the stroke next to Vaux le Vicomte. One man loses a chateau. One man loses use of his hand. Both learn that power is not just what you take, it is what you can still do when much has been taken. That is not in the 48 Laws as a slogan. It is in the life around them. So why does everyone fear this book? Not because it makes you powerful overnight. It does not. Not because it turns you into a sociopath by chapter 3. It does not. People fear it because it makes the invisible visible, and you cannot vote to make it invisible again. You read one law and you see it in the last meeting you sat through. You read another and you see it in the last argument you lost. The fear is not that the book is false. The fear is that parts of it are true and you had no words for them until now. New material, not summary. Here it is. Viking still prints it. Penguin still sells it. Prisons still ban it in 18 states and still hand it out when they do not ban it. The concise pocket version still sits on gas station racks. The full 452-page brick still sits on CEO shelves. Greene still answers letters about it. He still says it is about seeing, not about becoming cruel. So the unresolved question is not whether the book works. It is what you will do now that you have words. Will you use them to take a little more or to be taken a little less? Will you close the book and call it nonsense, which as we said is partly true, and walk into the next room without it? Picture that next room. Someone in it has read it. Someone has not. The difference will show in the third sentence they say to you. You will hear it if you listened. If you did not, you will answer anyway. The book will be on the table either way. Banned in one building, requested in the next, the black and red cover catching the light.